Hi, Master Model Lightning Saix. Hey, how's it going? Welcome to the channel. In today's video, we are taking a look at the Zoids High Master Model Lightning Saix, Marking Plus version, and the Irvine Special from Kotobukiya. Since the Irvine Special is still a Lightning Saix, and it just has a little bit of extras, I figured why not review it together with the Marking Plus version and make this a double feature. So the original High Master Model Lightning Saix was released in July of 2010. This is the Marking Plus version, so it's pretty much the same thing, just with decals, and it was released in September of 2020. I bought mine 2 years later in September of 2022 from Amazon, costing me $66.21 Canadian. I never bought the original Lightning Saix, which is why I opted to get the Irvine Special. The kit was released in February of 2013, yeah, been a long time, and I bought it in July of that year, costing me 4,930 yen from Hobbyland Japan. Isn't it crazy how much they spiked up in price? Also sucks that the Irvine Special is a unique release, meaning it never got a re-release, so if you want to get one, they're gonna be pretty pricey nowadays. So yeah, in this review, aside from comparing the obvious visual differences, we will also be comparing the structural integrity of a kit I built almost 13 years ago in the Irvine Special compared to the Marking Plus version, which I built only like a month ago. So let's start this review. Like always, beginning with the box. Really nice looking box art. It's pretty much the identical one from the original Lightning Saix. We got a pair of Lightning Saix running with a Saber Tiger, and in the background we got a Whale King. Too bad we'll never get a high master model of this because it would be too damn big and too damn expensive. Also, you might have noticed it's one of the smaller size Zoids, so it's got a smaller box. And like all Zoid boxes, one side has a large text box in Japanese, and on the other side we got images highlighting the Zoid itself and the decals that come with it. Keep in mind these images are of a painted kit, so a straight build will look a little different. Now for the Irvine Special, unfortunately I already threw away the box several years ago because I never expected to do YouTube. But here's what the box art looks like. All the armor is being ejected off the Zoid. And if I remember correctly, the box was pretty large. It's like the same size as the Liger Zero's box, which is to be expected because more armor pieces means more runners. But onto the kits themselves. Here are the High-End Master Model Lightning Saix, Marking Plus version, and Irvine Special side by side. Complete straight build, I did not panel line them or apply any of the decals, of which we're actually going to get different sets of decals for this kit. So before we talk about the differences, because there's quite a bit, let's talk about the similarities. So besides some extra armor that's given for the Irvine Special, both builds are exactly the same. There isn't actually that many parts, it's quite simple of a build, something I would actually recommend for beginners. It took me around 7 hours to build the whole thing. The end result is a pretty good looking kit, unless you zoom in which case you might find some nub marks. Granted, the kit is majority a dark kit, so they're harder to see, but on the silver pieces, they stick out like a sore thumb. And because majority of the armor on the Irvine Special is silver, you're going to see a little bit of the nub marks sticking out there. As for extras and optional pieces that come with the kit, it does come with 2 sets of claws which you can interchange. Firstly, we got these splayed out claws. I'm currently using them on the Irvine Special. They're unable to move, but they just give it a different type of stance. The other sets of claws I used for the Marking Plus. The claws are forward facing, with each claw being able to move up and down. And if you look underneath, the paw portion is actually hollow. This is for a very cool gimmick that the claws could do. You can actually fully rotate the claws inside the hollow part, and when doing so, you actually get shorter claws that protrude. I prefer the claws being elongated, but it's really nice to have that option. And like I said earlier, both kits comes with these sets of claws and they're interchangeable. Now after having built pretty much 2 of the same kit, there are some issues I want to bring up. First issue is that the pegs for the limbs are actually quite short. I originally thought it was because the parts were getting loose, and after some time with all the limbs falling off, you kind of realize the hole is just too shallow. So for my Irvine Special, which is over a decade old, this is much more noticeable, because there is still some joint degradation. Not as bad as other Zoid kits during that time, but it's there. Another issue I ran into was these claws do fall off a lot, so I just plastic glued them, but only to a point where it allows me to still interchange the claws. Now for the differences that come with the kit. As for decals, both kits do come with water slides, though the Marking Plus does provide a lot more. Then we have the Irvine Special, which only comes with 4 decals. Keep in mind this kit was released in the early ages of Zoid, so they didn't have that many decals available. I chose not to put any decals on because I might paint it one day, who knows? I always say that, but I'm not entirely sure yet, so I'm saving those decals for that possibility. Moving on, for cockpit eye lenses, both come in clear green, but the Marking Plus does offer a non-colored clear version, and the Irvine Special has this clear orange. Both kits also come with pilots, but one's definitely more generic than the other. For the Marking Plus version, you have Silver Steve, basic pilot that comes with all Zoids. In the Irvine Special, you actually have a painted figure of Irvine as a pilot and as just a freestanding figure. I don't really know where I placed my Irvine, so here's a picture of what it looks like. Now hopefully that covered all the extras that came with the kit. Let's take a look at the appearance of the kit itself. As you're gonna already tell by the appearance, it's pretty much based off of Cheetah, which fits the Lightning Saix' silhouette because it looks very aerodynamic and agile. And I gotta say, I absolutely love the color scheme of this kit. The dark colored plastic contrasts the silver very well, alongside the red plastic makes this color scheme look fantastic. Only issue is that because it's a Zoid, it has a lot of panel lining opportunities, but because it's a dark colored Zoid, the panel lining won't be that noticeable, but you can still do it on the silver bits. In contrast, all that armor on the Irvine Special makes it look very big and bulky, kinda like a leopard. But the armor is very big and has a lot of panel lining opportunities, which is actually very good for this, because it will definitely stand out here. And whether you have the armor on or off, you can still see a lot of surface level detail and mechanical elements found throughout the kit. And though the piping will undoubtedly get in the way of articulation, I still like it as a design element. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I absolutely love the bulk that's added onto the Lightning Saix over here. Though they're pretty much the same kit. The weapons, the basic body design, everything's the same. You just got extra armor and some extras. Despite being the same kit, it just has a different aesthetic. And personally, I'm a fan of both, in terms of appearance at least. But let's see how they differ in articulation. Alright, with that said and done, let's start the articulation. And we're going to begin with the normal Lightning Saix. And as typical Zoid fashion, things are falling off as I'm handling it. In this case, it is these circular vents that sit behind right over here. I do recommend gluing these vents down because these parts fall off quite frequently. But if you don't want to, just be careful with how you hold the kit. And beginning with the head, which is one of my favorite looking designs for a Zoid, the cockpit hatch can open up this far, revealing the cockpit inside. The kit does come with a pilot figure, but I didn't throw him inside yet. As for the base of the head, it's able to rotate down this far, pretty much 90 degrees, but due to the design of the head, it's unable to look up. Additionally, the base of the head can also turn side to side quite a bit, and here's a frontal view of that. And of course, being a Zoid, it's got a mouth that can open and close, revealing some nice sharp dagger-like teeth, which is always one of the cool aspects of Zoids. As you can see, though this is one of my newer kits in my collection, it's still based off an old design, so though the joints aren't horrific, they're still pretty weak. As for the base of the neck, it has very minimal up and down movement, almost non-existent, but the side to side is pretty good, which is kind of funny because it means that this kit is never going to be able to look up. And moving on to the arms, and that little vent piece fell off again, just going to leave it there. The forelimb is able to externally internally rotate this much, which is pretty good. We got a full 360 rotation with nothing blocking it. In addition, there is an extra piece on the forelimb that allows some more shoulder extension. The elbow joint is able to bend and extend this much, which is good enough. The paws themselves do have a pretty good dorsiflexion, and the joints, if you play around with them, they'll fall off. Just gonna leave it off at this point. So dorsiflexion and extension for the paws are pretty good. Like I said, the paws are attached with a ball joint, allowing 360 movement, as well as allowing pivoting side to side. Additionally, a very cool gimmick is that the claws are able to fold within the paws itself, giving you the option to display it with retracted claws or extended claws. Keep in mind this only works for the straight claws, these splayed out ones won't move at all. And coming onto the body, there's some weaponry underneath the belly, but unfortunately the silver plate doesn't really attach well. Cool gimmick, but it's very annoying. And yeah, this is also where the vents attach to, so those pieces could fall off as well. But in the end, the weapon system is supposed to look like this when it's fully extended and being able to retract and fold back into the body. But unfortunately, the connection for that silver plate isn't that great. Moving on to other weaponry, flipping this piece all the way up reveals some missile pods. Can't go wrong with some hidden weaponry. Moving on to the giant cannons on its back, the connection is always kind of weird. The connection seems tight, but the moment you move it around, it just kind of falls off. But if it is attached, you are able to 360 rotate. But of course, if you move it too much, it just kind of falls off, which is a common theme for the Zoid. So I'm just gonna leave it detached. The arm comes with two joints, one on the top and one on the base of the arm, allowing some pretty good range of motion to tilt up and down, with the only other piece that can move on the weapon being these fins that can flip out like so. Love the look of the weapon, but the connector piece is quite annoying. And like other Zoids, the Lightning Saix does have a Zoid core that sits in its chest, and you kind of have to maneuver it out, but in this circumstance I kind of just blew out this bottom piece of the neck. The inability to move the neck up makes it a little difficult to pull out the Zoid core, but it's not a big deal. And coming to the hind legs, we got this much of an internal-external hip rotation. 360 rotation of the leg is possible as well. And we got this much of a hip abduction. And the knees are able to bend this much and extend this far. I'm not entirely sure what these vents are, but they're able to move up and down. This coincides with the ankles being able to bend this far. Similar to the front paws, the hind paws can move the exact same way, being able to bend quite a bit, 360 rotate, and pivot side to side. As for the body, we have this much of a back extension and ab crunch. And while doing this, you can also see the moving gimmicks for the wire sliding back and forth, which is pretty cool. There's also a pretty decent side bend coming from the lower back. Lastly, coming to the butt area, we got these blades which are able to move up and down. The tail is on a ball joint which could 360 rotate and move side to side. Parts of the tail are able to bend, but be careful because the armor pieces on the tails do just kind of shoot off. Just saying, because they are kind of small, so you don't want to really lose them if they come flying off. But like I was saying, there are two joints on the tail which allows pretty sharp bending. Kind of looks really weird just because of how angular it looks, but yeah, that's it. Overall, pretty good articulation coming from the normal Lightning Saix. Quite a bit of parts do fall off when you're handling this kit, but overall not too much of a headache. So moving along, now let's start the articulation with my older kit, the Irvine Special. With all the armor on, let's see how much that limits the articulation. And first things first, any side-to-side movement on the neck or head is going to be restricted because of this armor piece and the cabling that's stuck onto the back, but it looks like that doesn't inhibit the base of the head being able to tilt all the way down. And as you can see from all the piping that goes inside the mouth, that's going to pretty much block any movement coming out of there. But at least none of that actually affects the cockpit hatch from being able to open. Moving on to the forelimbs, the giant armor pieces do block the internal-external shoulder rotation, as does it also restrict the forelimbs from abducting. And though 360 rotation of the arm is possible, the bulkiness does get in the way. But hey, at least the armor does stay together and nothing's falling off. And of course, elbow bend is also restricted, with a design element I don't really like because there's this cabling here that attaches the top of the arm to the elbow, and when you bend the elbow, it just disconnects. The armor doesn't inhibit any of the paws from moving up and down. And for this Lightning Saix, I chose to use the spread out claws, so no movement there. And of course, we still got a 360 and side to side pivot. Coming onto the body, we have this little weapon plate that just slides over the red vent that's on the original Lightning Saix. And like the original Lightning Saix, the cannons over here could still unfold itself, but that gray piece still having the tendency of falling off. But I gotta say, those quad cannons together look pretty good. Luckily, most of the armor are on the limbs, so it doesn't inhibit any of the side bending or the back extension and ab crunch, but it does block the visual gimmick of seeing the pipe slide back and forth. And for my own sanity, the gun moves the exact same way as the normal Lightning Saix. The armor doesn't inhibit it, so I'm not going to bother showing it. Like the forelimbs, internal-external rotation is limited, so is the abduction and adduction. 360 rotation is still possible, but just a little clunky. And similar to the elbows, there's a poor design where there's cabling stuck from the top of the leg to the knee, meaning every time you bend the knee, the cabling comes out. So although you are able to bend the knee, I guess this design implies that you shouldn't really. Especially considering this stupid cable is actually annoying to put in. Also, the top part of the cable does wiggle. Which is kind of weird because this kind of implies that it allows the leg to move, because it could compensate the movement, but because of the shape of the wire, it can't really move that much. As for ankle dorsiflexion, it's going to be limited just because this armor piece blocks the movement over here. The hind paws function the exact same way as the front paws, being able to bend all the way up and down, as well as side to side pivot and 360 rotate. And from the rear end, everything moves the exact same way as the normal Lightning Saix. Pointy parts can move up and down, and the tails have the same movement, with the same problem of course of these small little pieces on the tail flying off. So as expected, all that armor and cabling does prevent a lot of articulation. In addition, it doesn't really help the stability of the kit just because the armor kind of adds quite a bit of width to the limbs. This unfortunately results in the pegs actually getting pushed out. That and the cables popping out whenever you move the limbs does get pretty annoying. So unfortunately, compared to the Marking Plus, you're not going to be able to obtain the same level of articulation. But that lack of posability doesn't mean no posability. I'm just comparing it to the original Lightning Saix. But of course, these kits aren't limited to ground poses. There's a socket underneath the body which you could attach a display base. I'm currently using the Flying Neo base from Kotobukiya. So put in a jumping, running, or flying pose, and you got a pretty good display. Which for the Irvine Special, unless you want to display it in a static pose, this is probably the best way of doing it, because that armor definitely doesn't help in posability. Now as for a shake test, remember these kits are based off an old design, and one's over a decade old. Yeah. This one's held up a little better. In the grand scheme of things, it wasn't that bad. The joints did get a little loose as I was handling it. I'm just going to reattach the leg, give it a little more of a shake. since based off of the older HMMs, joint degradation is definitely there, though not as horrific as the other kits. The normal Lightning Saix is in a similar scenario, though being only a couple months old. It comes with the same problem where if you move it too much, joints do get a little loose and you just kind of have to push them back in. So things do fall off, not terribly explosive, at least better than the Shield Liger. As for dimensions, with the gun all the way in this position, it's around 7 inches or roughly 17 centimeters, give or take how you position the gun. As for length, it's around 9.5 inches or 24.13 centimeters. And for size comparison, here it is next to the entry grade ARC-782, master grade ARC-782, the Shensing Technology White Tiger, and though I don't have Irvine's Command Wolf, here's Brad's for comparison. And lastly, the high-end master model Liger Zero. And we got Haro, Doraemon, DK, Rubbing Alcohol, Teddy Ursa, Pikachu, Vulpix, Diglett, and Rubber Ducky. As for shelf presence, they're average size Zoids, so they're pretty big and noticeable. That's what she said. And with that concludes the double review. What are my final thoughts? Well, the Lightning Saix itself is a very unique Zoid, so pretty much just based on that, I think it's a good idea to buy it, if you could get it for a good price. Now for the Irvine Special, that's going to be much harder and more expensive to try to find. And keep in mind, it's just a Lightning Saix with extra armor, so it's up to you whether or not you want that, just based on aesthetics. The armor also makes it much more difficult to pose, and a bit more annoying to handle, just because there's more parts, meaning more things to fall off. Granted, it's not like a Shield Liger, so at least you could bear with it. As for the normal Lightning Saix, it's not immune to having parts falling off, but it's much easier to handle. So in my opinion, the normal Lightning Saix, or Marking Plus version, whatever, is a pretty good deal. You should definitely grab that kit. Color is also quite unique for a Zoid, so it would be a nice addition to your collection. Just know you're not missing much if you're not buying the Irvine Special. So unless you have to have it, you don't have to break your wallet. And there you go, that's what you can expect if you're planning to get a Lightning Saix. And if you're on the fence about the Irvine Special, hopefully this video was helpful. Thanks again for watching the video. Take care, bye.